The war room fell silent as another star system disappeared from the holographic map. High Commander Zareth stared at the empty space where Hadros Prime had existed just hours ago. 3 billion souls gone in an instant. The Velkrath had consumed everything, leaving nothing but dark matter behind. That makes 19 systems this month, Captain Myron said, her forearms hanging limp at her sides. The proud Koresh warrior looked defeated for the first time in her long career. At this rate, we have 18 months before they reach the Council homeworlds. Zareth nodded slowly. 347 years. That was how long the Galactic Council had been fighting this war. His grandfather had commanded fleets when it began. Now Zareth watched their civilization crumble, system by system, world by world. The Velkrath were unstoppable. Every strategy failed. Every weapon proved useless. The hive mind adapted faster than the Council could innovate. "We need to discuss evacuation protocols," Ambassador Lise whispered, her luminescent skin dimming with sorrow. As a luminari, she felt every death across space. The psychic echoes of 3 billion deaths from Hadros still rang in her mind. The outer colonies must be abandoned. "We can save perhaps 40 billion refugees if we act now." "And put them where?" Captain Myron slammed her fist on the table. "We have lost 60% of our territory. Every world is overcrowded. Every station is at breaking point. There is nowhere left to run." The other council members sat in stunned silence. Representatives from 12 species, the oldest and wisest civilizations in the galaxy, had no answers left. They had tried everything. Conventional warfare, quantum weapons, biological attacks, even temporal disruption. Nothing worked. The Velkrath just kept coming. An endless tide of ships and soldiers, all controlled by one vast intelligence. "Perhaps," one elder said quietly, "it is time to accept the inevitable. We have fought with honor. Our species will be remembered." "Remembered by whom?" Zareth asked bitterly. "The Velkrath do not remember. They consume and move forward. In 2 years there will be no one left to remember anything." Ambassador Lise stood suddenly, her eyes glowing bright. The other council members turned to look at her. She rarely spoke during military meetings, preferring to observe and offer wisdom only when needed. But now she trembled, her hands shaking. "There is one option we have not discussed," she said softly. "One path we have refused to take." "What option?" Zareth demanded. "We have explored every possibility. Our greatest minds have worked for centuries on this problem." "Not every possibility," Lise replied. "There is a quarantined sector. Sector 7719, the Sol system. We have hidden it from the Council for 200 years. The room erupted in confusion. Zareth felt his blood run cold. He had heard rumors, old stories whispered among the intelligence services, a dangerous species locked away for the safety of the galaxy. "The humans," Captain Myron breathed. "You cannot be serious. Who are the humans?" Another delegate asked. Ambassador Lise activated a new hologram. A small yellow star appeared with 8 planets orbiting it. The third planet glowed blue and green, covered in water and life. 200 years ago, we detected radio signals from this system, Lise explained. We sent scouts to investigate. What we found terrified us. A species that had survived 6 separate extinction-level events. Nuclear war, climate collapse, pandemics, asteroid impacts. Each time they should have died. Each time they rebuilt stronger than before. "Why did you hide them?" Zareth asked. "Because they are dangerous," Lise said simply. "They fight amongst themselves constantly. Their history is written in blood. Wars that killed hundreds of millions, weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They nearly ended themselves a dozen times. The Council decided to quarantine them, to watch and wait until they either destroyed themselves or evolved beyond their violence." "And did they?" Captain Myron leaned forward, interest replacing despair in her eyes. "Yes," Lise said. 60 years ago, they achieved global peace. They solved their resource problems, cured their diseases, and began colonizing their solar system. They have not had a major war in half a century, but the capacity for violence remains. We have watched them carefully. They still maintain weapons, still train soldiers, still remember how to fight. "Then why have we not contacted them?" Zareth demanded. "Because we were afraid," Lise admitted. "A species that survives by refusing to die, that treats extinction as merely another problem to solve. The psychological profiles we built showed something unique. Humans possess extreme empathy combined with extreme violence. They will die for strangers but also commit terrible acts to protect their own. We did not know how they would react to learning about the galaxy. We did not know if we could control them. The room fell silent again. Zareth looked at the blue planet on the hologram. Such a small world, so far from the Council territories. Could such a young species really make a difference? What are you proposing? He asked finally. We break the quarantine, Liz said firmly. We tell them everything. We ask for their help. It is a desperate gamble, but we are desperate. Perhaps a species that refuses to accept defeat can teach us how to win. And if they refuse? Someone asked. Why would they help us? We have ignored them for 2 centuries. Because, Lise said quietly, reaching out with her psychic senses toward that distant blue world, humans possess something we have lost. Hope. They believe impossible things can be achieved. They turn science fiction into reality within decades. And most importantly, they have a saying, no one gets left behind. If we show them what is at stake, if we show them the refugees, the children, the billions who will die, they will help. Their empathy will not let them turn away. The council voted. It was close, but desperation won over fear. They would make first contact with humanity. They would reveal the galaxy and its war. They would ask these strange, violent, hopeful creatures to join a fight that seemed already lost. As the meeting ended and delegates filed out, Zareth remained behind, staring at Earth on the hologram. Such a small world to carry such large hopes. He wondered what these humans would be like. He wondered if they could truly make a difference. Most of all, he wondered if the Council had just saved the galaxy or doomed it to an even worse fate. Ambassador Lise stood beside him. They are our last chance, she said quietly. I hope you are right, Zareth replied. Because if they fail, there will be no one left to mourn us. The hologram flickered, showing real-time data. The Velkrath fleet was moving again, consuming another system. The clock was ticking. In orbit above Earth, Council ships prepared to jump into human space and change history forever. Dr. Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee on the moon when the aliens arrived. She stood in the observation dome of Armstrong Research Station, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon, when every alarm in the facility started screaming at once. Sarah, her assistant, ran into the room, nearly dropping his tablet. Ships, dozens of them. They just appeared out of nowhere above Earth, Mars, and here. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, floating slowly in the low gravity before she caught it. On Earth, she had spent 20 years listening to space for signs of alien life. Now, apparently, they had come to her. Through the dome's transparent ceiling, she saw them. Massive vessels hanging in space like impossible sculptures. Their designs beyond anything human engineering could produce. They did not look threatening, but they did not look friendly either. They simply waited. All stations are reporting the same thing, her assistant said, checking his tablet with shaking hands. They appeared simultaneously above every major human settlement. Earth's defense grid is asking for orders. General Webb wants all scientists on immediate conference call. Within an hour, Sarah found herself on a video call with every important person on Earth. President Okonkwo's face filled the main screen, looking remarkably calm for someone dealing with first contact. General Marcus Webb sat beside her, his military uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. They are broadcasting on all frequencies, the president said. A simple message, we come in peace. We need to talk. Meet us above Earth. We have decided to send a delegation. Dr. Chen, you will represent the scientific community. General Webb will represent our defense forces. I will speak for our government. Shouldn't we be more careful? Someone asked. We know nothing about them. We have been careful for 200 years, President Okonkwo replied. They could have attacked already if they wished. Instead, they are asking to talk. We will listen. The meeting took place aboard the largest alien vessel, a ship so vast it could swallow entire cities. Sarah walked through corridors that made no sense to human eyes, passing creatures from a dozen different species. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or crawled or moved in ways that defied description. They were led into a circular room where High Commander Zareth waited. He stood tall with blue skin and 6 fingers on each hand. His eyes held a sadness that Sarah recognized instantly. This was a man who had seen too much death. Welcome, he said in perfect English, his voice translated by technology Sarah could not begin to understand. I am Zareth of the Tarveen. This is Ambassador Lise of the Luminari, and Captain Myron of the Koresh. We represent the Galactic Council and we have come to ask for your help. Help with what? General Webb asked, his hand resting near his sidearm. Instead of answering, Ambassador Lice activated a hologram. Images filled the room, showing worlds burning, ships exploding, billions of refugees fleeing across space. Then came the enemy, the Velkrath, a species that looked like nightmares made real, consuming everything in their path. For 347 years, we have been at war, Zareth explained. We are losing. In 18 months, our civilization will end. 40 billion refugees will die in the next major attack. We have tried everything. Nothing works. We are out of options, out of time, and out of hope. Why come to us? President Okonkwo asked. We have only just reached our own moon colonies. What can we do that you cannot? Because you survive, Ambassador Lice said softly. Your species should have died 6 times. Nuclear war, climate disaster, pandemics. Each time you rebuilt, you refused to accept defeat. We have forgotten how to do that. We fight with honor and tradition, but those things are getting us killed. Perhaps you can teach us something new. Sarah felt her heart racing. You have been watching us. For how long? 200 years, Zareth admitted. We detected your radio signals and came to investigate. What we found frightened us. A violent species that nearly destroyed itself repeatedly. We decided to quarantine your system, to wait and see if you would mature or self-destruct. You left us alone, General Webb said, his voice cold with anger. While we struggled with climate change and disease, while we fought to save our planet, you watched and did nothing. Yes, Zareth said simply. We were wrong. We were afraid of you. But now our fear seems foolish. You solved problems we thought impossible. You achieved global peace without a world government forcing it. You built a civilization based on cooperation. We should have made contact sooner. For that I apologize. The room fell silent. Sarah looked at President Okonkwo, trying to read her expression. The president's face remained calm, but Sarah could see her mind working, calculating possibilities and consequences. We need to discuss this among ourselves, the president said finally. You are asking us to join a war we did not start, against an enemy we have never met, for people we have never known. This is not a decision we can make quickly. We understand, Ambassador Lice said, but please understand our urgency. Every day we wait, thousands die. The Velkrath do not rest. Back on Earth, the debate began immediately. Every nation, every organization, every citizen had an opinion. Some wanted revenge for the isolation, arguing that the Council had abandoned humanity when they needed help. Others saw opportunity, a chance for humanity to prove itself on a galactic stage. Many simply felt horror at the scale of death shown in those holograms. Sarah watched the debates from her office on the moon. The arguments went in circles. Some people wanted to fight, others wanted to hide. Earth had achieved peace, they said. Why throw it away for strangers? Why risk human lives for aliens who had ignored humanity for 2 centuries? Then a video appeared online that changed everything. Someone had edited together the footage from the alien presentation, focusing on the refugees, children of a dozen species, their homes destroyed, their families dead, their eyes filled with terror. The video ended with a simple question. If you could save them, would you? The video went viral within hours. Sarah watched it 3 times, tears streaming down her face each time. She thought about her own daughter safe on Earth. She imagined those refugee children, running from an enemy they could not fight, dying because no one would help. The global referendum passed with 68% approval. Humanity would help, but there was one condition. President Okonkwo delivered the message personally to the Galactic Council. We will help you, she said, standing tall in that alien conference room. But we do it our way. You have been fighting this war for over 3 centuries with honor and tradition. That has not worked. If you want our help, you accept that we will do things differently. We will not follow your rules of warfare. We will not fight with your traditions. We will do whatever it takes to win. Can you accept that? Zareth looked at the other council members, then nodded slowly. Yes, we are desperate enough to try anything. Good, President Okonkwo said. Then let us show you how humanity fights. Within weeks, Earth mobilized. Factories that had been building peaceful colonies retooled for war. Scientists who had been studying the cosmos turned their attention to weapons. Soldiers who had spent years in peacekeeping roles trained for combat again. Sarah found herself leading a team to the front lines, carrying humanity's hopes with her. As her ship prepared to leave the Sol system, she looked back at Earth one last time. That blue marble, so peaceful from space, was sending its children to war once again. But this time, they fought not for territory or resources, but for strangers who needed help. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, and Earth disappeared behind them. Ahead lay a war zone 3 centuries old. Sarah wondered if humanity would make a difference. She wondered if their refusal to accept defeat could tip the balance. Most of all, she wondered if they would survive long enough to find out. On the bridge, General Webb stood watching the stars streak past. "Here we go," he said quietly. "Let's show them what humanity can do." The Council research station orbited a dying sun, its laboratories filled with the galaxy's brightest minds working on weapons that never quite worked. Dr. Sarah, Chen walked through the facilities with growing horror at what she saw. "This is your weapons development program?" she asked, staring at a massive energy cannon that took 6 months to build. "How long does it take to deploy one of these in battle?" "Approximately 3 weeks," the Tarvine scientist replied proudly. "It is our fastest production model yet. The previous version took 2 months. Sarah closed her eyes and counted to 10. 3 weeks. The Velkrath could destroy a star system in 3 days, and these people needed 3 weeks to deploy a single weapon. No wonder they were losing. "What about smaller weapons?" she asked. "Quick deployment, hit-and-run tactics?" The scientist looked confused. "That would be dishonorable. We announce our attacks beforehand, allowing civilians to evacuate. We engage in open battle, matching force against force. This is how civilized species conduct warfare." "This is how dying species conduct warfare," Sarah muttered. She pulled out her tablet and started making notes. Humanity had 6,000 years of warfare to draw from, most of it decidedly uncivilized. Time to teach the galaxy some new tricks. At the military headquarters, General Webb faced similar frustrations. He stood in a briefing room with Koresh officers, going over battle plans for the defense of Kepler Station, an important supply hub. "The Velkrath fleet will arrive in 7 days, Captain Myron explained, pointing at the holographic display. "Our forces will meet them here in open space. We will form battle lines and engage directly." "Why?" Webb asked. "Because that is how battles are fought," another Koresh officer said, sounding offended. "We do not hide. We do not run. We stand and fight, and you die," Webb said bluntly. "Every time. Look at your casualty reports. You lose 60% of your ships in every major engagement because you fight predictably. The Velkrath know exactly what you will do because you have been doing the same thing for 3 centuries. You suggest we fight without honor?" Captain Myron's forearms crossed over her chest. "I suggest you fight to win," Webb replied. "Honor means nothing if everyone is dead. Let me show you something." He changed the hologram, showing Earth's history of warfare. He showed them guerrilla tactics from Vietnam, ambush strategies from ancient Rome, deception campaigns from World War II. He showed them how smaller forces defeated larger ones through unpredictability and creativity. The Koresh officers looked disgusted. "These tactics are cowardly. We would never stoop to such methods. Then you will lose," Webb said simply, "and 40 billion refugees will die because you were too proud to fight dirty." The argument continued for hours, but Webb had planted a seed. As the officers filed out, Captain Myron lingered behind. "Show me more," she said quietly. "I do not like your methods, but I like losing even less. If we must abandon honor to survive, then perhaps honor is a luxury we can no longer afford." The Battle of Kepler Station came sooner than expected. The Velkrath fleet arrived 3 days early, catching the Council forces unprepared. Zareth watched from the command ship as enemy vessels poured out of faster-than-light space, outnumbering the defenders 2-1. "All ships, form defensive lines," he ordered, following standard protocol. "Prepare to engage." The Council fleet moved into position, elegant and organized, meeting the Velkrath advance head-on. Within minutes, they were losing. The enemy's hive-mind coordination proved superior once again, focusing fire on weak points, adapting to every defensive maneuver. Then something unexpected happened. A small human frigate, the UES Defiance, broke formation. "Defiance, what are you doing?" Zareth demanded. "Return to your position." "Negative, command," came the reply from Captain Jennifer Martinez. "We have a better idea. Just watch." The Defiance dove toward a nearby asteroid field, something no Council ship would ever do. Asteroids meant unpredictable obstacles, collisions, chaos. Civilized fleets fought in open space where maneuvering was clean and proper. But the Defiance weaved between asteroids like a dancer, using them for cover. Velcrath ships followed, trying to corner the small vessel. Then the trap sprang. The Defiance had deployed hundreds of simple drones, basically missiles with no intelligence, just ballistic trajectories. The Velcrath hive mind could not predict them because there was nothing to predict. They were just rocks with engines bouncing off asteroids in random directions. 3 Velcrath cruisers exploded as drones struck their engines. The enemy formation broke apart, confused by tactics they had never encountered. The Defiance continued its mad dance through the asteroids, leading more enemy ships to their doom. All ships. General Webb's voice came over the command channel. Stop fighting fair. Use the environment. Be unpredictable. Make them react to you instead of the other way around. Something shifted in the battle. Council ships began breaking formation, using the nearby planet's gravity well to slingshot into unexpected positions. Koresh fighters stopped announcing their attacks and started striking from behind. Tarvine cruisers deployed fake distress signals, luring Velcrath ships into ambushes. The Velcrath fleet, for the first time in 300 years, retreated. They had won thousands of battles through superior coordination and adaptation, but you cannot adapt to chaos. You cannot coordinate against randomness. The hive mind, for all its intelligence, could not predict irrational behavior. Zareth stared at his display in shock. They had won, actually won, not just survived, but driven the enemy away with minimal losses. The Defiance limped back to the fleet, her hull scarred from asteroid impacts, but her crew celebrating. Defiance, that was the most reckless, dangerous, completely unacceptable display I have ever witnessed, Zareth said over the comm. Thank you, sir, Captain Martinez replied cheerfully. Want us to teach the rest of the fleet how to do it? The victory at Kepler Station changed everything. Over the next months, human advisors spread throughout the Council military. They taught tactics that seemed insane to traditional thinking. Fake retreats to lure enemies into traps, booby-trapped installations, misinformation campaigns, psychological warfare. The Koresh warriors learned human martial arts, discovering that sometimes a knife in the dark was more effective than a charge in broad daylight. The Tarvine strategists studied Sun Tzu and von Clausewitz, ancient human texts on warfare. The luminary psychics, despite their discomfort, learned how to deceive enemy scouts with false emotional projections. Sarah's team made breakthroughs in disrupting Velcrath communications. Human hackers, kids who had spent their teenage years breaking into secure systems for fun, proved invaluable at finding weaknesses in alien networks. But the Velcrath were not stupid. They learned too. After months of victories, the Council forces grew confident, perhaps too confident. They walked into a trap at the Thessera system. The Velcrath had studied human tactics and prepared a counter. They sacrificed an entire fleet as bait, luring the Council armada into a system surrounded by hidden forces. When the ambush triggered, it was devastating. 2 million civilians died as the Saratha IV's defense stations fell. 30 Council ships were destroyed. 8,000 humans perished in the battle. On Earth, people watched the casualty reports in stunned silence. This was real. This was not a video game or a movie. Real humans had died in space, fighting for aliens they had only known for months. The celebrations of previous victories turned to mourning. Sarah sat in her lab, staring at the names scrolling across her screen. People she had trained. People she had laughed with. Gone. She felt the weight of every decision she had made, every tactic she had taught. Was this worth it? Were they making a difference or just adding human deaths to an already massive toll? Then a message arrived from the refugee camps. A video from a Tarvine child, no more than 5 years old by human standards. The child held a drawing showing humans and aliens holding hands under a peaceful sky. "Thank you," the child said in broken English. "Thank you for trying to save us. Please do not give up." Sarah wiped her eyes and got back to work. The Velcrath were adapting, but so would humanity. That was what humans did best. They learned from failure and came back stronger. The war was far from over, but now both sides knew the truth. Humanity had changed the game, and nothing would ever be the same again. Earth received the casualty reports from Thessera IV at 600 hours. By 0900, volunteer centers across the planet were overwhelmed. 500,000 people signed up to join the war effort in a single morning. President Okonkwo watched the numbers climb and felt pride mixed with sorrow. This was humanity at its best and worst, running toward danger to help strangers. In the council chambers, Zareth watched this human response with amazement. His species would have mourned for months after such losses. Humans mourned for a day, then got angry, then got to work. He was beginning to understand why Ambassador Lise had called them in the first place. They simply did not know how to quit. "My government is asking me to explain human psychology," Captain Mirren said, entering Zareth's office. The Koresh warrior had changed over the past months. She wore a human combat knife on her belt now, and her fighting style mixed Koresh strength with human cunning. They want to know why humans react to death by volunteering for more danger. "It makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense," Ambassador Lise said, entering behind her. The Luminari looked tired. She had been maintaining a psychic link with Dr. Sarah Chen, sharing thoughts and emotions across vast distances. Humans are tribal. When their tribe is threatened, they become more dangerous, not less. Losses make them fight harder, not surrender. It is terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Zareth pulled up human history files on his display. During their Second World War, they lost over 50 million people. Did they surrender? No, they built more weapons, trained more soldiers, and fought harder. In one battle, they lost 20,000 soldiers in a single day trying to land on a beach. The next day, they sent more soldiers. Earth's militaries knew how to break any species psychologically, but could never quite break humans. That is what we need now. On the front lines, the war escalated. Earth's industrial power, dormant for decades, roared back to life. Factories on Mars and the Moon produced weapons around the clock. Shipyards in Jupiter's orbit constructed vessels based on hybrid human council designs. Humanity had spent 50 years building a peaceful civilization, but the infrastructure for war had never been completely dismantled. They had hoped never to use it again. Now they were grateful for that caution. Sarah's quantum research bore fruit. She discovered that the Velkrath hive mind communicated through entangled particles across vast distances. If they could disrupt that communication, they could blind the enemy. She worked with Luminari psychics and Tarvine engineers to build quantum jammers, devices that could scramble Velkrath coordination in localized areas. The first field test came at the Battle of Helios Point. Council forces deployed the jammers mid-battle, and the effect was immediate. Velkrath ships stopped coordinating, each vessel forced to act independently. Without their hive mind advantage, they became predictable, vulnerable. The Council fleet tore through them like a knife through paper, but victories came with costs. The war spread to more systems. More refugees fled before the Velkrath advance. The Council's resources stretched thin despite Earth's contributions. Everyone knew the real test was coming. The Velkrath would eventually strike at the heart of Council territory, at Arcturus Prime, where 40 billion refugees from 100 worlds had gathered. The attack came 6 months after humanity entered the war. Velkrath forces appeared in overwhelming numbers, surrounding Arcturus Prime like a closing fist. 8 enemy fleets to 1 Council defense force. High Command ran the numbers. Even with quantum jammers and human tactics, they could not win this fight conventionally. General Webb called an emergency meeting. "We have one option," he said, displaying a plan so insane that several council members simply laughed. "We hollow out Arcturus's smaller moon. We fit it with every FTL drive we can spare. We aim it at the Velkrath mothership and we ram it at faster than light speed." "That is suicide," Zareth said flatly. "The energy release would destroy everything within 1,000 kilometers. Any ship guiding that moon would be vaporized." "Yes," Webb agreed. "That is why I am asking for volunteers, not ordering anyone to do it." The room fell silent. Using a moon as a weapon was beyond anything the Council had considered. It was wasteful, destructive, and completely insane. It was also brilliant. If it worked, the Velkrath mothership would be destroyed, and without their command vessel, the enemy fleet would fall apart. Captain Jennifer Martinez stepped forward. "The Defiance volunteers. We got the jammers close enough to test. We can get a moon close enough to matter." "Captain, you understand what you are volunteering for?" President Okonkwo asked, her face appearing on the communications screen. "There is no survival in this plan. You and your entire crew will die." "Yes, ma'am," Martinez said calmly. "But 40 billion people will live. That math works for me." Over the next 3 days, engineers from a dozen species worked without sleep. They carved out the moon's interior, installed every available FTL drive, and rigged it to the Defiance's navigation systems. The crew of the Defiance, 2,000 men and women from Earth, prepared for their final mission. They recorded messages for their families. They said their goodbyes. They did not waver. Captain Myron came to see them before the battle. "I do not understand you," she admitted to Captain Martinez. "How can you fly to your death so calmly? Does it not terrify you?" "It terrifies me," Martinez replied honestly. "But someone has to do it. Might as well be us. Besides, we are not really dying alone. We die together as a crew doing something that matters. There are worse ways to go." The battle began at dawn by Arcturus Prime's clocks. The Council fleet engaged the Velkrath forces head-on, using every trick humans had taught them. They drew enemy fire, created chaos, forced the Velkrath to commit their reserves. Behind the battle lines, the Defiance pushed the hollowed moon into position, hidden among asteroid debris. The fighting was brutal. Ships exploded on both sides. Thousands died every minute. The Council line bent but did not break. They knew what was coming. They just had to hold on a little longer. "Defiance to Fleet Command," Martinez's voice came over all channels. "We are in position. Moon is armed and ready. It has been an honor serving with you all." "The honor was ours, Defiance," Zareth replied, his voice breaking. "Thank you. All of you." The UES Defiance fired its engines one last time, pushing the weaponized moon toward the Velkrath mothership at incredible speeds. The crew sang as they flew, an old Earth song about exploring strange new worlds. Their voices filled the communication channels, a final message of hope and defiance. The moon entered FTL speed. Reality bent around it, and then it struck. The explosion lit up the entire system. The Velkrath mothership simply ceased to exist. Vaporized along with the Defiance and her crew, the shockwave tore through the enemy fleet, destroying dozens of ships and scattering hundreds more. Without their mothership's coordination, the Velkrath forces panicked and fled. Arcturus Prime was saved. 40 billion lives continued because 2,000 humans chose to end theirs. On Earth, in the Council territories, across refugee camps on 100 worlds, people stopped and observed a moment of silence. The names of the Defiance crew were read aloud, remembered by billions. In her lab, Sarah felt the deaths through her psychic link with Ambassador Lys. 2,000 bright sparks of consciousness, extinguished in an instant. She collapsed, weeping, feeling the weight of every life given for this war. Lys held her, sharing the grief, neither speaking because there were no words adequate for such sacrifice. Captain Myron stood at attention in the Koresh tradition, saluting the empty space where the Defiance had been. She finally understood humans. They were not fearless. They were terrified just like everyone else. But they went anyway because someone needed to, and they refused to let others face danger alone. 10 years later, Ambassador Lys would visit Earth and help build a memorial on the moon. She would stand before a wall inscribed with 2,000 names and remember the day humanity taught the galaxy what true courage looked like. The Joint Armada assembled near the edge of Velkrath territory, the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. Ships from 50 species floated in formation, human vessels mixed among Council cruisers like pieces of a vast puzzle. After the victory at Arcturus Prime, the momentum had shifted. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Velkrath were retreating. Dr. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the research vessel Endeavour, studying data from her quantum experiments. She had been working on a theory since Arcturus, something that bothered her about Velkrath communication patterns. They were not just coordinating through quantum entanglement. They were talking, actually communicating complex ideas across their hive mind network. "I think I can talk to them," she said suddenly, looking up at General Webb. "Not just jam their signals. Actually send messages they can understand." Webb frowned. "Why would we want to talk to them?" "We are winning, are we?" Sarah asked. "We have pushed them back, yes. But they still control thousands of systems. If we try to exterminate them, this war will last another century and cost billions more lives. But if we can communicate, maybe we can negotiate." "Negotiate with genocidal monsters?" a Koresh officer spat. "They have killed trillions. They deserve nothing but destruction." Sarah understood the anger. She felt it too, every time she saw casualty reports or spoke with refugees. But she was also a scientist, and something about the Velkrath behavior had never made sense. They consumed resources, yes, but they left some worlds untouched. They killed millions, but also bypassed some systems entirely. There was a pattern she could not quite see. "Let me try," she insisted. "If it works, we might end this war. If it fails, we lose nothing and continue fighting." After heated debate, High Command approved her experiment. Sarah spent 3 days building a communication device that could interface with Velcrath quantum networks. When she activated it, she half expected nothing to happen. Instead, her mind filled with voices. Millions of voices, all speaking at once, all part of a single vast intelligence. "You are the new ones," the Velcrath consciousness said, its voice like thunder in her thoughts. "The ones who do not fall. The ones the prophecy warned us about." "What prophecy?" Sarah asked, struggling to maintain her mental focus. The weight of the hive mind was crushing. Images flooded into her consciousness. She saw the Velcrath history. 800 years ago, they had lived peacefully in the Andromeda Galaxy, a collective intelligence studying the cosmos. Then something came. The Devourers, they called it. A force of pure consumption that ate entire galaxies, leaving nothing but void behind. The Velcrath fled to the Milky Way, but the Devourers followed. In desperation, the Velcrath searched for a way to stop them. Their psychics found a prophecy, a vision of the future. A species would arise that could defeat the Devourers, but that species would also destroy the Velcrath first. The prophecy described humans perfectly, a young race that refused to die, that turned extinction into motivation, that inspired others to hope. "We attacked your galaxy not for conquest," the Velcrath explained, "but to gather resources before the Devourers arrive. We needed the strength to run again, and we needed to reach your world before you could join the galaxy, because the prophecy said you would end us." Sarah's mind reeled. The Velcrath were not conquerors. They were refugees just like the billions fleeing before them. They were scared, desperate, trying to survive the only way they knew how. "When do the Devourers arrive?" she asked. 70 of your years, perhaps less. They consume slowly but inevitably. Nothing stops them. Nothing survives them. We have run for 8 centuries. Soon there will be nowhere left to run. Sarah broke the connection, gasping for air. Around her, the bridge crew stared in shock. They had heard everything through her communication device. The war they had been fighting for 3 centuries was not about conquest or genocide. It was about fear and survival. "This changes everything," Zareth said quietly. Emergency council session convened within hours. Sarah presented her findings to representatives from every species. The revelation caused chaos. Some refused to believe it, insisting the Velcrath were lying. Others demanded immediate extermination, arguing that the Velcrath had still killed trillions regardless of their reasons. A few, mostly humans, suggested a different path. "They are refugees," President Okonkwo said. "Desperate refugees who made terrible choices. We can relate to that. Humanity nearly destroyed itself 6 times. We understand fear and desperation. The question is, do we repeat the cycle of violence or do we break it?" "You cannot be serious," Captain Marin protested. "They killed my entire colony. Billions of Koresh are dead because of them. How can we forgive that?" "I am not asking for forgiveness," Okonkwo replied. "I am asking for pragmatism. In 70 years, something worse than the Velcrath arrives, something that made them desperate enough to attack us. If we waste decades finishing this war, we will not have time to prepare for the real threat. But if we make peace now, we gain the Velcrath's knowledge about the Devourers. We gain time. We gain a chance." The debate raged for days. Sarah watched powerful beings argue about justice and vengeance and survival. She understood both sides. The refugees deserved justice. The dead deserved to be remembered. But the living deserved a future. Finally, a vote was called. By the smallest margin possible, the council voted for peace talks. Not everyone agreed. Entire fleets of Koresh warriors refused the order, vowing to continue fighting. But the majority chose to try. The peace negotiations took place on a neutral station. Sarah led the human delegation, using her quantum link to communicate with the Velcrath consciousness. The terms were harsh. The Velcrath would dismantle their offensive capabilities. They would share everything they knew about the Devourers. They would provide reparations to refugee worlds. In exchange, they would be allowed to settle in designated areas and join the galactic community as equals. Not everyone accepted the peace. A Velcrath loyalist faction launched a suicide attack on the peace conference, believing surrender was unacceptable. They targeted both the council representatives and their own diplomats. In the chaos, Captain Marin threw herself in front of a Velcrath diplomat, taking the blast that would have killed him. She died instantly, her last act saving one of her people's ancient enemies. Her sacrifice shocked both sides into stillness. Here was a Koresh warrior, a species that had lost billions to Velkrath attacks, dying to protect a Velkrath life. If she could choose peace over vengeance, perhaps anyone could. The treaty was signed in her honor. The war that had lasted 347 years ended not with final victory, but with exhausted acceptance. Humanity had stepped into a galactic war and changed everything, not just with their military tactics, but with their capacity to forgive. 10 years later, Sarah stood on Luna, watching the Earth rise over the horizon. The Defiance Memorial stretched out behind her, 2,000 names carved in stone, a reminder of what had been sacrificed. Earth had changed. Humans now lived on dozens of worlds, worked alongside 100 alien species, and helped prepare for the coming threat. Ambassador Lise materialized beside her, the luminary's form shimmering in the weak gravity. The deep space sensors detected new anomalies at the galaxy's edge, she said quietly. The Devourers are ahead of schedule. We have perhaps 50 years, not 70. Are we ready? Sarah asked. Lise smiled. 10 years ago, we were a broken council fighting a losing war. Today, we are a united galaxy of 50 species working together. We have fleets 10 times larger than before. We have technology we never imagined. We have hope. All because humanity refused to let us surrender. Are we ready? I do not know. But we have a chance. That is more than we had before. Sarah looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. An enemy that made the Velkrath look like children. But humanity had faced extinction before. They had always found a way to survive, to adapt, to turn impossible odds into opportunity. Then let them come, Sarah said quietly. We will be waiting. All of us together. On Earth, President Okonkwo stood before the Galactic Union Assembly, representing humanity's voice in galactic affairs. On Koresh colonies, warriors trained in both traditional combat and human tactics, honoring Captain Myron's memory. On Velkrath settlements, former enemies worked alongside their victims, building a future neither had thought possible. The galaxy had fought for centuries alone, divided and failing. Then humanity stepped in and taught them something their ancient civilizations had forgotten: that survival requires more than strength or technology. It requires hope, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Zareth, now retired and teaching at Earth's Luna University, gave a lecture on the human paradox to a classroom filled with students from 30 species. Humans, he explained, possess something unique. They are simultaneously the most violent and most compassionate species we have encountered. They will die for strangers, but also fight with a ferocity that terrifies even the Koresh. This paradox makes them unpredictable, dangerous, and absolutely essential. The Devourers are coming. When they arrive, they will face something they have never encountered before: a united galaxy that refuses to die quietly. And leading that defiance will be the species that taught us all how to hope again. In the darkness between galaxies, the Devourers moved forward, consuming everything in their path. They had destroyed 1,000 civilizations, turned 100 galaxies into void. They expected the Milky Way to be no different. They were about to learn why that was a mistake, because this galaxy had something none of the others possessed. This galaxy had humanity, and humanity had taught the stars how to fight back.